Our next guest is a dynamic designer with a diverse skill set in interior design, exhibition design, and visual merchandising. Her multifaceted approach earned her the reputation for delivering creative and award-winning design solutions. With 10 years of professional experience in hospitality, commercial, and residential projects, she excels at all levels of design development. Her expertise expand to spatial planning, design detailing, specifications, and of course, project management. Get ready to be inspired by Marcela Munoz, Senior Interior Designer at Gensler, as we dive into the world of research-infused design. Welcome to the show, Marcella. It's great to have you here. Just off the bat, I think we need to clarify that you are Marcella, not Marcel. I know some people get you guys confused in Gensler often.
Yeah, I mean, we do have a Marcel, and for some reason, people think that I'm Italian and they call me Marcella.
Yeah.
But no, my name is Marcella. Yes.
Good. I'm glad we got out of the way straight away off the bat.
Exactly.
So tell me a little bit about your career at Gensler and what you've been up to recently.
So, well, a little bit like background on myself. Well, as I said, my name is Marcela. I'm from Mexico. I'm an interior designer by bachelor degree, but I also have a master in exhibition design, which I'm like super passionate about. So I've been in the region 8 years, but with Gensler, 3.5 so far. I'm a senior designer, so I really focus on the creative part of the projects, really enjoy the concept part, of course, as everyone else, doing the narrative, selecting the materials, the furniture, like all this backstory. Of course, you also deal with all the client facing and all these extra things, but that's a little bit of what I do.
Okay. And just on the personal side, if you could tell me like one thing that might surprise me or the audience that's listening in right now about yourself.
Yeah, there's like something really funny that people always laugh about. I actually also have some studies in color theory and color psychology.
Oh.
I love color and use color in my, like in interior spaces, but you will ever see me wearing color. Like I will always wear like black or white, which is kind of like ironic because I always tell like, oh, I love color. And then they see me, it's like, but you're always like in black and white. So yeah, it's kind of like a funny story.
Color psychology. So that always keeps arising as a conversational topic to me. I've always put it in the bucket of like pop psychology, but is there much research in that realm?
Yeah, there is a lot. There is a lot. So I think I first started kind of like books that interest me and kind of like understanding like where to use this and other color and which is the reaction that the people have to those colors. And then you start understanding that actually like blue colors have like a mental reaction and red colors, they actually have like an emotional reaction. And I mean, there's so much about it and it's so interesting to know that, yeah.
But doesn't it differ by location and culture? So like white, which you're wearing right now, I'm wearing black, we're opposing colors, the Yin and Yang Spectrum, I suppose. The majority of the Western world would say that white is like peace and love and purity, whereas in like Japan, it's associated with death. So how does the color psychology play out in that regard?
I think that there's like definitely, as you said, like colors can mean different things depending where you're located. Also, like, for example, red, I think people has this relation that it will give you hunger and it will make you hungry. And that's why McDonald's and KFC, but it's actually, that's not true. So there's like a psychology for it, but there's an interpretation depending of zones. Of course, I haven't so deep into it, but I know that there's like a little bit of it.
Yeah, I remember in my postgraduate studies reading a journal article about the power of red, actually. And they were looking at judo championships, and statistically, people who wore red gis in comparison to blue were more successful regardless of competency. So like red does actually have an effect to a degree of significance. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, and something new every day.
I mean, the colors are like, I just think color is so powerful. And even I think that on what we do is just so important, like which colors do you use? Like, how are you basing like the selection of the tones in an interior space and how that's going to interact and react to the people? So I think that it's something that every single person should know a little bit about.
Well, the reason why I'm so excited to have you on, Marcella, is because there is not a lot of research in the Middle East and Africa region, especially in our industry or really in general. And as I understand it, Gensler have a brand new piece of research that just dropped in April of 2020. And this is going to be the first time that you guys are really talking about it publicly in the region.
Yeah.
And as I said, it's really thin on the ground. In fact, the only other research that I really read that's focused on like corporate interiors in the Middle East dates back to like 2016 and a researcher from Sheffield Hallam University called Nick Nunnington. And there was some really interesting content that came out of it, but then nothing really since. Now, I know you guys brought some stuff out during COVID. You dropped the first iteration of this survey in 2021, and now we have the second iteration in 2023. I'm just so excited to hear what you guys have to say on this topic. So please, could you just kind of give me like the high level overview just to kick things off around Gensler's new research?
The first time that we did a research on the Middle East, I was actually 2020. It was actually pre-pandemic. And then this new one, as you said, like April 2023. So a little bit of like the findings is that people are definitely back to the office, but from a work week, they only go 50% of the time. I think there's like a 70% they work from home, and the rest of the percentage, they are remote.
Okay, people are going to want to know, what are those days? Where's the sweet spot? What days of the week are people coming in, and what days of the week are they working from home?
Well, I don't know exactly the days. We just know like as an overall.
Yeah.
And also kind of like important, like when we said remote working, it can be anything from working from a cafeteria, a library, even traveling for business and working outside the office, or even going to a client meeting. So there's definitely, people are back, but the kind of interesting part of it is that people feel that they need to go more to the office.
Okay.
Like people in the Middle East overall feel like, I think it's at 50 to 20% and they need to be more in the office so they can increase their productivity. The question is like, if they have that need and that thought, why are they not going back to it? It's kind of like that's the part that we want to understand.
Okay.
And as part of the research, we also kind of found out that the reason why they're going back to the office is focus on their work. This doesn't mean that they want to go and focus in their individual work. They actually want to work with others in person. They also want to socialize, and they also go for learning purposes. So people really want to connect to each other, which is very interesting to see. I mean, there's just so much. I can just go on and go on.
Yeah.
Okay, so another kind of like nice fact out of like the research is that Middle East has the most innovative companies around the globe.
How did you determine that?
So the way we measure innovation in our surveys is by like 6 main topics. So it's basically if the company has like creative thinkers, if the leadership encourages innovation, do they mentor innovation or do they foster innovation? Do they innovate on their products and services and things like this? Depending on like these topics is how we measure how innovative a company is or not. And the Middle East has the most innovative companies out there, which is important. And this is really high related to productivity. So people that work in innovative companies, they're more productive. And the reason why they're more productive is because they have choices. It's very important to provide people with choices in how they work.
Okay.
What this means is like people can work alone, they can work with others, they work with others virtually, they learn, and they also socialize. So having this range of opportunities, it what's improved productivity in the people.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about the sample. We just want to make sure that this is a significant spread across the region and not just focused on heaven forbid, just Dubai or the UAE. No. So tell me about the sample, the demographic that was included and the ages and genders and different
I'll tell you a little
working
bit
profiles.
Of that. So basically the survey was sent to 2,000 plus people. I think it's just important to mention that these are not Gensler clients.
Okay.
They're not rating Gensler design spaces. They're completely anonymous. And it's actually, Gensler doesn't send the survey. It's through a third-party company that we do this. So as I said, it was sent to 2,000 people. About demographics, I mean, the majority of the people and the responses are mainly UAE and Saudi Arabia with a little bit of like Kuwait, but we were not able to spread the survey throughout all GCC or all Middle East. That's like very important to know. Of course, we were able to reach to 9 different industries. What this means is from companies, from tech, from energy, consumer goods, financial, private services, so on. Also, it's sent to different roles in the company. So it's not only managers or directors. We also send to general staff. Ages from baby boomers to Gen Z, all the way across. Gender, male and female, always because of the region, I have to say, sadly, more male responses than females. I think a 60-40%, something like that.
That's not too bad.
Yeah, not that bad. That's like a little bit of like the overview and like the people that we survey.
Okay, and the generations was an even spread. I know millennials take a significantly larger portion of the workforce today, so is that represented in the data as well?
Yeah, it is. So important to say, like, if you want to know exactly like the percentages or not, on these details, everything is in our website. It's free for download. So that's kind of like the nice thing of Gensler. We don't charge for this information. We just share it to the world, which is amazing. And then in there, you will see the exact percentages. But what I remember a little bit, like, there's a more portion of millennials, and we kind of divided in young millennials and like older millennials. The portion of Gen Z is like very low. I think it's like a 10-15%. And seniority or baby boomers is like, I don't know, like a 20%.
Okay.
So there's like a little bit of a mix. Everyone is included. So
lovely.
Yeah.
So check out Gensler.com if you want to dive into the data for your own self. So Workplace Performance Index, I noticed that was some terminology that you use. Could you just elaborate on what that means and how that's specific to Gensler? Something you created, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. So all the research is based on measure the work performance of people, right, in the workplaces. So how do we measure this? So basically it's divided like in 4 key elements, which is culture, interaction, behavior, and spatial. So what it means, behavior is having choice or different modes of working. Spatial is the function of the space and the aesthetics of the space. Culture is that people know the purpose and the vision of the company and how they push to innovation. And interaction is how people collaborate and which are the tools that they use to collaborate between them and also with people outside of the company. So it's very related to technology.
Okay.
So these 4 topics is what measures the work performance of people.
And you abbreviate it to WPI when you're referencing it in the research.
Exactly. We just say WPI because Work Performance Index.
It's quite long.
Yeah,
of course.
Exactly.
So when I was looking into the 2020 data, and I noticed that the WPI scores for the Middle East were actually pretty good, far better than I expected that they would be, having been here. Yeah, for like, I've been here for 8 years, and I'm looking at the data going, why is the WPI scores so good for the Middle East? So maybe if you could tell me a little bit more there.
Yeah, so when we measure globally, like there's so many countries involved. So you're talking from Japan, the United States, Germany, Mexico, UK, so on. And yeah, Middle East got the highest score. So the way we relate this is because it seems that the workplaces back in 2020, they have a good balance in people to perform focus work and collaborative work. And that's why they got like a really high score on it. Because when you compare it to other countries, for example, in the US, there's a lack of spaces for focus work because they don't use private offices, for example. Then you have like in Japan, there's like a really unbalanced way of professional and personal life. Like they work so much that at the end of the day, they're not satisfied. They're not energized.
Yeah.
And when you sample against other countries, Middle East is the happiest. So that is like really important to see.
I also noticed from the data that it probably has something to do with the proportion of those dedicated private office spaces. So we seem to have more so than other regions around the world. So it probably goes hand in hand that if you've got your own private office with a fantastic view out of a window, you're probably going to rate that your space is...
It's amazing.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
But that wasn't across the board, was it? There was a certain demographic that highlighted that they like their spaces better than others.
Yeah, so the way that went, and again, more information in Gensler.com. Also, the research for 2020 is available for download. So basically, locals have more access to private offices, and they have better ratings of WPI. So they're the happiest of the happiest.
Yes.
And expats, on the contrary, they don't feel the same way. The reasoning why is because locals use their private offices for focus work, which actually improves in productivity. So they can get things faster because they can just focus, and they use the rest of the time to socialize, which gives like a really happy life scenario. While expats, on the other side, because they don't have that access to private offices, they struggle more of getting focus work. And then because there's so much, the space is used so heavily in private offices that they don't have spaces to collaborate. So when you come from a culture that is more used to collaborate, like talking about expats, right? And they don't have that access, they don't have the private offices, they don't feel that excited. So like back in 2020, kind of like the summary of it is that we need to find a better balance in how just not supporting locals and the needs of the market of having private offices. How can we also support expats?
I think it's like hazard a word of caution on the data, because you could look at it and go, all right, well, the answer is let's just give everybody their own dedicated private office. But of course, then that hinders culture and collaboration. Like I'm a big believer, if you've got your own private office and you never leave that office on a working day, you might as well not come to the office. You might as well just do that from home.
But the thing is that after, like, that was pre-pandemic, and now post-pandemic, people are going back to the office because they want to work with others.
Yeah.
They want to be in contact with their colleagues. They want to socialize. They want to connect. So I think that has shifted already because the pandemic happened. I think people spend so much time alone that they're like, okay, I'm done with this alone thing, and I just want to connect with my team. I think that is amazing. And also, this kind of is also teaching you that maybe you don't have to use so many private offices at the end of the day, or maybe the private office can be bookable. You know, it doesn't have to be specific for one person. There's just so many ways of how can we tackle this the subject, right?
Yeah, I think being accessible to all is the most logical way forward. Understanding that everybody, regardless of seniority, needs to access those spaces so that they can do heads down focus, concentrated work when they have that requirement, because we don't do that all day, every day, right? It's only for certain blocks of the day do we have that requirement. So we should have access to a space when we have that need.
Yeah, and the important thing now that you say that is that when we got the results that people are going back to the office to socialize, learn, and working with others, these activities are better supported with the workplaces, but working alone and working virtually are not supported with the current spaces and scenarios. So they're not spaces for focus work. Like the majority of the offices, they just have rows and rows of desks, right? Of course, because you want to keep like these open plan collaborative, you don't have acoustic screens, around the person. So, and then at the end of the day, the person doesn't want to go into a phone booth that is like a 1 meter by 1 meter to work for 2 hours. You just go there for a quick call. So there's a lack of those kind of spaces. Also, the part of the office are not supporting virtual interaction. It means that we are a little bit behind on the tech side. So we see the market as like, oh, we're just like into the future. But based on our results, there's a little bit of like lack of having the latest of the latest.
I think there's a gap in the market for manufacturers. So if you're a manufacturer listening out, maybe take heed of this, but Zoom rooms, like team spaces, so that you've got really good technology in there, good microphones, good cameras, great lighting so that people can actually see you. And so you can just plug in and it works within a minute. Now, I chaired a panel the other day for Cornet, and one of the gentlemen on the panel represents a very large tech organization. And I said, there's only really one question that I want to ask you is, how long does it take for you to set up meeting room technology? And he's like, Oliver, it takes me just as long as it takes everybody else. We haven't got it figured out. And I'm like, well, you guys are the ones that are designing the technology for these spaces. So if you haven't got it figured out, how's the rest of us supposed to deal with that? And I think it takes between 10 and 12 minutes on average to set up meeting room technology.
There you go. I think that it's time, and I mean, funny to say, also like in our projects, the first order that needs to be placed is like AVIT
Yep.
because the lead times are insane. You're talking about like 18 weeks or something like that. Also, that's like the thing that people have to put more money into it. So sometimes I think companies focus more in creating like the perfect environment, putting their money into it, but maybe not focusing so much on the tech. So we need to find a balance, I think, on that.
Okay. So going back to the different demographics, did you notice anything in particular there between like the generations or the different genders and how they related to workplace and the types of spaces that they wanted to consume?
So yes, so we noticed that, for example, seniors, like people with higher levels, for example, they spend more time socializing and working with others virtually. This means, I mean, this is kind of like a little bit obvious because seniors, they're more in meetings, they're more with clients, you know, they're also kind of like mingling around with people, see how they are and so on. So this is the kind of spaces that they need. While other people, like the general staff, they need like, they work more with others, so they need those collaborative spaces. They need more those spaces where they can focus. So it does shift, even by generation. It changes a lot of like the needs of what one generation needs and what other needs. So it's very diverse. I don't know the relation of like by gender, really. We also have some data that it says that it also changes by industry.
Right.
So like what the tech industry or what the consumer goods or an energy company, whatever needs is very different to what the other one needs. Like it's just very interesting to see how it can be so diverse if you really dive into the very raw data. And of course, we do release kind of like a briefing document on our website. But the full document is just like a 60 pages document of like full on data of all of this information. And as we have like different events or different conferences or whatever, we start releasing that information. It never goes all in one, because then what is exciting about that?
I want access to the full holy grail of content that you guys have.
Follow Gensler in LinkedIn, Instagram.
And of course, you guys have a great podcast as well at Gensler as well.
Yes, I hope that we will have one for our research released. They're still in the talks. Let's see if it happens.
Cool. So what are the big differences between the 2020 and the 2023 research, would you say, in your mind?
Differences, but also similarities.
Okay,
the one that I like the most is actually that we were very mobile even before the pandemic. People, they always think it's like, oh yeah, because of the pandemic, we're going hybrid, we're going mobile. It's like, dude, that already existed. Like, it's just that people didn't talk about that. But like in the 2020, the results were that, of course, people were in the office, but not 100% of the time. There was like a small percentage that they were working from home. I think it was only 10%. And it was like another kind of like 20-25% that they were actually mobile. So this means, again, the same of working remote, working from other locations, maybe traveling, connecting from somewhere else, going to client meeting, to site. So that was something that already existed. And actually on 2020, we saw that being actually mobile, it actually had an impact on the productivity of people. People were more happy when they were mobile. Why? Because they have the choice of doing what they want. People just want the freedom of like working today from home, tomorrow from the site and from the office. Like, and then you see that relation of results also in the 2023, right? So, I mean, now I think there's a need of going back to the office because people miss the office, miss connecting. But at the end of the day, it's the same relation. We were mobile and we're just calling it hybrid now, right?
Yeah, I see autonomy as being a really key motivational driver that, you know, in lockdown, everyone got to work from home, but that's not autonomy because that was the only location that we could work from. And, you know, being in the office all the time, again, you know, that's just as reductive as being at home all the time. It's that sweet spot in the middle of flexibility and freedom to choose how, when, where, and with whom you want to work that is something that people just really strive for and feel they need at a very fundamental level to stay motivated and connected with work. And I think that's something that we really need to focus on as a region in general, because I am aware that just how transient the population is here. We have one of the biggest brain drains in the world, because people not just job hop, within the country, but maybe go to Singapore or Australia as the next part of their career ladder. So there's people moving so frequently here. We want to do the best that we can to retain them in an organization.
Yeah.
And in the 12 years that I've been in the industry, that is the number one thing that most clients that have that opportunity of redesigning their workplace reference to me, is that we want to focus on our attrition. How can we attract and retain the best talent? And by focusing on what motivates people, autonomy being one of those motivators, we get to keep people for longer.
I totally agree. Actually, recently we had like a meeting with a client. We're like importing so much talent, even though that I don't want to go flexible, I think I have to. Because if I want to literally like keep my team happy, all these people that I'm bringing in, then I need to adapt to their needs. And expats need that flexibility. Like they're used to it. That's the way they have always worked. Mostly like people that has like several years of experience on their backs. They're used to that. They move to this region and they expect to have that same way of working. They don't want to go of like being on an office if they're not used to that. Even like in that same project, we were interviewing people and they said like, I don't want to have an office. Like some of the people that I have never had an office. I don't want to have an office. I just want to sit with my team. We just like, not everything works for everyone, and we just have to adapt the market to have like a balance on it.
Yeah, I completely agree. My main concern is that as we move into, well, hopefully we can avoid this global recession that seems to be looming on the horizon that the Americans still won't admit that they're in. We move from that kind of employee mentality to an employer one when it comes to recruitment. So employees have had it pretty good during the COVID years, where they could work for whoever they wanted, whoever was offering them the best perks and benefits. Not that I think flexible working is a perk. It should just be something that is a given in organizations. To what degree the business should decide. But if we do end up going to a recession, I think it's going to switch back. People are going to find jobs a little bit more scarce, and employers are going to start flexing that muscle of saying, right, no, we want you in the office 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And I don't think backwards is the right direction. We've generated a lot of positive momentum in the last few years around flexible working. So I don't think back is the right way to go. And only yesterday, I was just reading an article on IBM, and they're a tech firm.
Yeah.
They provide the solutions to enable people to work from wherever. And they're like, no, we want you back in the office as often as possible, but 3 days being the minimum, and we're encouraging you to do that. And they also cited that if you don't come back, that could affect your ability to progress in organizations. And there is something to that, right? Out of sight is out of mind in many instances, but I don't think that's up to the employees to champion that. I think it's the employer's responsibility that if you've noticed that you're not promoting people who aren't in the office, then that's an issue that you have that you need to resolve, not the employees come back for the sake of that potential promotion, because different demographics prefer to work flexibly at different degrees. Ladies, especially if you have regardless of sex or gender, if you have child caring responsibilities, your need for flexible working goes through the roof. So should you be penalized because you have child caring responsibilities, or you're caring for an elderly parent at home, by not getting the promotion just because you're not in the office as much as someone else? I don't think that's really fair. So there's a lot to be done in that space as well, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, but also like companies adapt, or at least, I mean, I'm talking on my experience with Gensler, I think companies just adapt to it. Of course, there's like a policy of like, you have to be a minimum of, I mean, I think 3 is kind of like the number that everybody uses. Like, you have to be at least 3 days a week in the office. But like people in higher levels, they encourage them to be more. But the reason why, it's because junior staff look up to their peers. They need to be there. Like if a junior goes to the office and there's no one there to coach them, to guide them, I think that they might lose, like, you know, the interest of being there alone all the time. So there's a little bit of reasonings why, like, they encourage people to go a little bit more or go to a little bit less, at least in also what we do, being in the office and having the access, like, to materials, physical samples, things that you have to sketch. It's just better to do it in paper, or maybe I'm just old school, but I think that it's just like pushes things forward more. And in the case of like mothers, like for example, myself, I have a daughter of like, she's 2, and it's just talking with your, you know, talking with your peers and saying, you know, this is the situation, I have to go here, like in myself, just giving a little bit of insight on my life on this. So for me, I tell my team, I have to leave the office like at 5:45, 6. Yes or yes, because it's very important to me to go back home and be a couple of hours with my daughter. And then if you really want to see something that is super important, I'm back online at 9.
Yeah.
So you decide if it's really important, then please just wait for me. I'll be online. I'm available. It's just that I need to make this cut on my work hours because I have something more important to do.
Yeah.
So I think it's just setting also your boundaries. I really hope that all companies have like that flexibility of having an open conversation in how to keep their employees happy.
No, that hits me hard as well. I have a daughter around the same age as your daughter, and as I recently found out, same name. Oh yeah.
Yes.
My minds think alike and all that. So yeah, you know, as a father, you know, I appreciate the time that I have with my children right now. I mean, we don't get them for very long at this incredibly cute stage that they're at.
It
Sometimes
is.
very frustrating, but you know, when I'm having a bad day, if I'm working from home, I just go downstairs, look in their eyes, and that kind of completely changes, you know, how I feel, and I'm ready to go back to work again.
Yeah.
But pre-pandemic, I was on the road for like 185 days a year, and I wouldn't have the opportunities that I have now is to spend time with my kids. So I really appreciate being a little bit more grounded and prioritizing them rather than just my career at this current, you know, phase that I'm in my life.
Yeah.
And it's just nice to see them grow and develop into the cute little things that they are, right?
Yeah. I mean, they're definitely it's a full-time job.
Mhm.
I think I saw recently on Instagram that actually being a mom, a homestay mom, is actually working 98 hours a week because you work from 6 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. that they go kind of like average to sleep, and then you work like even Saturdays and Sundays. So I mean, to the mothers, like, my respect always. And I actually wanted to share something with you about like some results that we got about like professional and personal balance. So when people have choices of work, they actually have better productivity, and that productivity impacts their balance of professional and personal life. So when you have a workplace that actually supports you in your needs, at the end of the day, you have a satisfaction. You feel energized. It even supports your well-being. And it's not only having choices of ways of working, it's even having the correct amenities that will support you to be productive. What this means is like, for example, having like quiet zones, having project rooms, lounges, having cafeterias, maybe mother's room. Like there's a full range of amenities that can support the performance of the employee, not only on a professional side, also in the personal side. And I think that what people want at the end of the day, it has like a balanced person that feels happy at the end of the day.
And are there any of those spaces in particular that have shifted in the last few years? So, you know, if you could speak to other designers in the industry, what should they be focusing on? What might they want to dedicate more square footage to based on, you know, the data from Gensler? So as an example, I was reading some content by Verge Sense. They do sensors in meeting rooms and across floor plates. And they've noted that between 2021 and 2022, the requirement to access collaborative spaces has grown by 210%. The requirement to access individual solo spaces has increased by 233%. So where should people focus their energy in terms of design? And I understand it's a case-by-case basis. You know, there's no cookie-cutter solutions here. Every client is unique and different, but based on the data, where should we focus our attention?
I think that the spaces that have better rating or that they score the highest and they're also the most used are like coffee shops, like coffee points, cafeterias, people love that. Like, and it's not like cafeteria that has a cafeteria that is inside of your workplace, like a nice kind of like kitchen hospitality vibe. I want to feel that I'm not in a desk, like, seeing at my monitor with my keyboard, like, because I think that this kind of amenity just changed your environment. You feel that you're somewhere else. So that's the space that is like the best rated and is where people want to work, like a lounge coffee kind of environment. And I think that also like coffee, tea, food always makes people happy as well.
Absolutely.
So it's a nice combination.
I think it's also serving that lonely need that we referenced earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
Mental health took a big hit during the COVID years.
Yeah.
And those spaces is really trying to bring people back together. That community and character of the organization is quite often instilled in those spaces. So I think it's really good for business, not just for like socializing, but socializing helps build, that connection. And then once you have a good connection with someone, you can collaborate with them after that. But if you don't have that connection with them and you are told to, work on a project together,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to take you some time to build those bonds together, right?
Yeah. And I think these spaces, they also encourage people to communicate. In our office, for example, we have in the mezzanine level, we have our kind of cafeteria, like cafeteria coffee point. And you can always hear like people like just chatting and, like sharing not only professional insights, but also like personal. And what did you do over the weekend? And here is where you get to know people the most inside, like outside from being in your desk and sharing kind of ideas side to side.
Feel free not to answer this question because it is
Okay.
prying a little bit. But having been involved in research in my career over the years, I know that these things aren't cheap. And I think that could be one of the reasons why we don't have that much research in the region. So could I just inquire as to how long it took you to generate these results and what were some of the costs involved? I'm going to throw out a number and maybe you could tell me like how close I am to that. I'm going to guess that it probably cost you between $150,000 and $200,000 to do this research over the course of a year.
I really don't know.
Oh, okay.
I really don't know how much money,
Yeah.
but I can tell you the effort.
Okay.
As you know, I mean, this is like a global strategy, right? So we start sending surveys to some countries on summer and then some other countries in fall. And it's until March, April that this information is being shared. So you're talking about like a 9-month work effort.
Yeah.
And in the Middle East, we surveyed 2,000, but the full sample of surveys is 14,000 people. So imagine getting that amount of responses. Each country has its own briefing document, its own report.
Yeah.
All of these goes to editorial. It's organizing the events that will put these out there to the market. So like, it's just like a huge effort on time. And also kind of like the interesting thing is that this is run from the US. So even to connect with us, there's like a time difference that it's so massive that they have to wake up super early.
Yeah.
And we have to stay a little bit late just so we can, meet. So yeah, it's like a huge effort on time, and the people that really work on this, they're amazing.
And you use Qualtrics, if I'm not mistaken, to help you with this as well?
Third provider is Qualtrics. Yeah, we have always worked with them throughout like all the research, even though that we have only done research for the Middle East 2 times. We have been running this for years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So based on the sample size of 14,000 global data, may I change my guesstimate? I'm going to go with $500,000.
I really don't know.
That's what I think it must be.
I really don't know.
10,000 survey sample is pushing above $500,000 to do something like that. So my hat off to you guys for having that investment and foresight to dig that deep into the world of work across the globe, and specifically in the Middle East, where no one wants to shine a light on our region. So I'm just so appreciative for this content. I really am, Marcella.
Yeah, I think that it's just like really important to not only design beautiful spaces, it's understanding the spaces itself. So I think that even the intention of like, the Gensler to include Middle East as part of the research strategy in 2020 is because I think these local designers that were always referencing back to global trends, But we saw like a huge market grow that it was like, we need to understand where we are and what works for us,
Yep.
you know, kind of like the results of 2020. It's working for locals, it's not working for expats. But expats are the 80% of the population in UAE. I think in Saudi Arabia it's like 50%. So like what is missing is like try to understand that and start building a case. And every time that they will do a research, it's always going back to the previous and try to understand how things are working. I think that like the fact of taking Middle East as part of the global strategy has been also like a huge thing for us, because now we understand it's not about like, oh, this Instagram moment that is going to be amazing. I mean, at the end of the day, what about the performance? What about the productivity? What do people need? I think that's what like clients are more thrown to. Like they want to understand that.
Yeah, again, research infused design just doesn't really happen in this part of the world. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we have some content to hark back to and to put in front of clients and reference to say, you know, this is where you want to be directing your energy. Last question.
Yeah.
So what's next?
What's next? I think on the research, we will just keep on pushing on getting the research out there. And again, as I said, like this is free, like really just go to our website and download if you want to get a little bit more information on that. And I think what's next is like try to implement this in our projects. I think that's kind of like the amazing thing. Like, as you said, like we can just go to our clients now and said like, you know, these are the results. This is what we need. You want to create like the workplace of the future, that they always use this word. It's like, this is what you have to do. Like, how can we create this environment? Of course, understanding your company, but also understanding the trends and how can we measure, like merge this and create something amazing. And I think it's just that, right? Like implementing the results and create better spaces. So when we do the next research, how can we see things shifting if we implement this? So,
and I know we haven't gone into the content in any real granular level, and that's because we're going to actually reference it in the notes from this podcast and from the videos, so you can delve into it in as much depth as you'd like to. But there is significantly more content on Gensler.com in regards to the research that they do globally, and you can check out the 2020 survey there as well. But thank you for being our guest on the Let's Talk series by Horton Interiors.
yes.
It's really been a pleasure, and thank you so much again to Gensler for producing this content that is sorely needed for the region.
Yeah, no, thanks for the invite. So happy to be here and sharing all of these. And I mean, I think that just the fact of Gensler just sharing this to the world is just take advantage of it,
Yep,
you know?
I intend to.
Like, yeah, exactly. I think that they're now, like lately, there's so many magazines that is like, but you have to subscribe. Not everybody can pay, you know? So I think that here, this is just for everyone to have.
Yeah,
So,
and it's free.
yeah,
That's the best bit about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Cool.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks a lot.